Tucker Carlson used to act like a rational person. What he talks about now is downright weird. UFOs, demons, the supernatural. But it's made him even more popular with right-wing audiences, and I'll explain why. I'm Amanda Marcotte. Welcome to Standing Room Only. For those of us who were adults during the Iraq War, it's a legend. The day that Jon Stewart nuked Tucker Carlson on Crossfire in 2004.
You have a responsibility to the public discourse, and you fail
need to get a job at a journalism
miserably.
School, I think.
How old are you?
35.
And you wear a bow tie.
Yeah, I do. I do.
So this is...
No, I know.
So this
You're
is
right.
theater.
No, let me just go. No, come on.
And listen, I'm not suggesting that you're not a smart guy, because those are not easy to tie. But the thing is that you're doing theater when you should be doing debate.
At the time, the criticism struck deep. Crossfire was actually canceled shortly thereafter. But Jon's criticisms didn't stick. Every time the political world thinks his career has ended, Tucker manages to rise again. He's truly the cockroach of the Republican Party. You can't get rid of the guy. And I think it's because he's shameless in peddling outrageous content. Tucker eventually came to realize that the pathway to professional success was to double, triple, and even quadruple down on the nonsense. But when I was researching for this episode, what struck me isn't just that Tucker is a hack. These days, he's also a big old weirdo.
I mean, the potential for mind control, or in fact, the reality of mind control by the state, it's almost impossible to have independent thoughts.
The two big programs that I know about, one is the UFO stuff, where there's a lot of evidence the U.S. government has had direct contact, maybe even negotiations with whatever these forces are.
We had a contentious dialogue.
Well, I
for
thought
a
you
long
were
time.
a Fed. I
thought you were a Fed.
I was a Fed.
If you're gay, you're gay.
Well, we were told that, and I believed a lot of things.
Do you not believe that?
Well, it's demonstrably not true because science tells us it's
Do you
not
think people
true.
are making it up?
I don't think they're making it up at all.
So what's your point?
I think that you can be moved in that direction through propaganda and pornography.
Come off it, Tucker.
Well, then how do you explain?
Is there anything that would make
Hold
you...
on.
Could I make you gay?
How hard do you want to try?
Not hard, I can tell you.
Tucker's career has been getting a fresh public re-examination. My guest for Pass the Mic, New Yorker writer Jason Zengerle, has a new biography out about Tucker called Hated by All the Right People. Jason traces Tucker's journey from a respectable journalist to what he is now, which is a hack and frankly a fascist. The Crossfire confrontation is a linchpin to this story, but as Jason points out, it's not as cut and dry as a comic book villain's origin story would be. For a hot minute, Tucker really did take Jon's criticisms to heart. He was still a conservative, but he tried to be a normal journalist. He even worked at MSNBC. But let's face it, there's not an audience for that, especially on the right. Soon, Tucker went to Fox News, and he had a big old chip on his shoulder. Liberals like Jon were no longer just people he disagreed with. He told his audience they were an all-powerful enemy oppressing hapless conservatives, and his show often veered into odd fantasies and bizarre obsessions.
Any expression of masculine sensibility, the traditional masculine virtues, is now illegal, so the left just kind of came in and took over professional sports. When they start treating the IRS as a military agency, you should be very worried. And that's exactly what the U.S. government is doing. January 6th, I think, is probably second only to the 2020 election, is the biggest scam in my lifetime. The famous Jon Stewart looks like a homeless mental patient. He's shrieking and disheveled and very short. Really short, too short to date. The green M&M, you will notice, is no longer wearing sexy boots. Now she's wearing sensible sneakers. The other big change is that the brown M&M has, quote, transitioned from high stilettos to lower block heels. Also less sexy. That's progress. M&Ms will not be satisfied until every last cartoon character is deeply unappealing and totally androgynous. Until the moment you wouldn't want to have a drink with any one of them.
I watched that when it first happened, but I forgot how stupid it was. Honestly, until he pointed out that the M&M shoes were different, I would have never ever noticed. Because you know what? I'm a normal person who doesn't care about M&M shoe choices. Like a lot of you, I thought that Tucker was done after he was allegedly pushed out of Fox News in 2023. But he's reinvented himself as the right's preeminent conspiracy theorist. He's done as much, if not more, than the president to remake the GOP into a fascist project. I saw him speak at the RNC in 2024, and folks, he brought down the House. He was more popular than the nominee or the running mate, almost as popular as Hulk Hogan. Brother. And it was terrifying, because his speech was basically a pitch for fascism.
The nation is different, the world is different, Donald Trump is different. When he stood up after being shot in the face, bloodied, and put his hand up, he was no longer just a political party's nominee, or a former president, or a future president. This was the leader of a nation. You can't name someone a leader. A leader is the bravest man. That's who the leader is. That is true in all human organizations. This is a law of nature. And in that moment, Donald Trump, months before the presidential election, became the leader of this nation.
I really came to appreciate what a talent Tucker Carlson is when I saw him speak at the RNC. You're sitting behind the stage when the press galley, and so you can see the teleprompter. Everyone had their speech loaded up on the teleprompter, except Tucker. He did not have any notes, he had nothing. He went up there and he spoke for the entire time just off the cuff. And that's why he's so responsive to the audience. And it's terrifying because he is an unbelievably talented bullshitter. It scared me. Why is Tucker so popular? It's not just that he's dishonest. That's true of all right-wing pundits. It's that he's especially talented at saying crazy things with a straight face. They want you to believe is Tucker's mantra, along with, it doesn't fit their narrative.
Female freedom was something that women wanted for so long. And I think it is a strong point to make.
Did they? Where's the evidence that they wanted that for so long?
Because
I don't think there's any.
And the left never did that. They would dismiss you out of hand. You are not worth listening to. Be quiet.
They want riots. That's why. Because they want the chaos.
The main thing they want you to believe is the supernatural is not real. Well, then you have to ask yourself, why?
That's interesting.
It is so interesting.
On Tucker's show, everything real is fake, and everything fake is plausible.
All of America's problems are downstream from weak men, obviously. That's why the women are crazy, because the men are weak.
At the height of Occupy Wall Street, the New York Times torqued up its coverage of racism. It was almost like somebody decided it would be better to be at war with each other than to be asking questions about our financial system. This is the defining fact of our lives, is that whites around the world are being eliminated.
Supernatural experiences are a feature of everyone's life. And if we're honest, we'll admit that.
People are like, oh, well, we had another hurricane, must be global warming. No, it's probably abortion, actually, just being honest. You can't do that. You can't kill children on purpose, knowing that you're doing that in exchange for power or freedom or happiness, or whatever you think you're getting in return. You can't participate in human sacrifice without consequences.
And tornadoes are for people who call Tucker Carlson a racist. There's a whole chart what your God's punishment is for you. Conspiracy theories are very addictive. Uncanny content grabs people's attention. It's titillating. It's also very intoxicating, believing that you have all this secret information that normal people don't have. This is also why Tucker keeps pushing his audience further to the right. He wants them addicted, so he keeps upping their dose with ever more outrageous content. That's why he keeps platforming people like Holocaust denialist Nick Fuentes or Sandy Hook conspiracist Alex Jones.
What did you see as the most important gatekeepers that needed to be overturned, pushed aside in order to do this?
It was the Zionist Jews, like Dave Rubin, like Ben Shapiro, like Dennis Prager.
CNN is literally the CIA broadcasting system.
For sure. I know Harvey Weinstein. He's a pig, as you know.
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't mean he's a criminal.
Right. And I have 3 sons. This case mattered to me because my sons' lives are now threatened by this movement that said, #believe women. Women lie. They lie a lot, right?
Yeah. Would you be shocked to learn that Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself?
No.
Oh, man. I can't believe they almost let that guy be a Jeopardy host. At this point, any concession to reality is a threat to the larger MAGA project. After all, if you start agreeing with liberals that Holocaust denialism is bad, you might start to wonder if there's other things they're right about, like abortion doesn't cause hurricanes. Tucker keeps surviving, even thriving. He survived being dumped by Fox News. He survived being attacked by Trump multiple times. He survived being hated by a bunch of other right-wing influencers. He did this by rejecting Jon Stewart's view that a journalist's duty is to facts and rationality. By pushing conspiracy theories and other nonsense, Tucker is meeting consumer demand. Tucker loves to talk about mind control, but he's living proof that there is no such thing. His audience has free will, and they're actively rejecting truth for his provocative lies. Somehow, Tucker seems to always be wearing the same checkered shirt. He is a millionaire, and he has one shirt. I'd like to welcome Jason Zengerle to Standing Room Only. Jason is a New Yorker writer and the author of Hated by All the Right People, his biography of Tucker Carlson. Welcome to Standing Room Only, Jason.
Thanks a lot for having me on. It's good to be here.
So I want to start by asking a very straightforward question. Why did you decide to write about Tucker Carlson?
You know, I thought Tucker was a really good vehicle to kind of tell this larger story of conservative media and conservative politics over the last 30 years because his career has, I think, reflected the incentive structures that existed at different times over that period. Because people who know Tucker Carlson today and are only familiar with him for like the last decade or so, I think would be really surprised to encounter the Tucker Carlson of 30 years ago. He started in a very, very different place from where he's wound up. And I thought the story of that journey, that sort of professional journey and that intellectual or ideological journey, I thought, spoke to something bigger that was going on than just Tucker Carlson.
He started off as a very normal, I'd say respectable journalist. He didn't seem like a strange guy. Like he was conservative, but he was very normal. But now he's just a kind of straight up weirdo. He's always talking about UFOs and demons and occult conspiracy theories. Why do you think he's made that transition into bizarro land?
I mean, I don't think he's the only one. I think our politics are there in bizarro land these days. I mean, if he was the only one doing this, you could say like, oh yeah, he's off the reservation. He's just a fringe guy, but he's reflecting something that's out there. In the same way Donald Trump reflects something that's out there. And I think that, people agree with him about UFOs and demons. And, there's a significant part of the country that I think he says those things and it resonates with them. And I think that's why he's worth paying attention to.
The first clip I want to show you is something, this was probably the first moment I realized personally that Tucker has really gone off the deep end, is this particular moment. So let me pull it up for you.
I wake up at 2:30 in the morning. I check and I couldn't breathe at all. I could feel myself starting to gray out. And then I started walking in the backyard, and then it slowly came back. Like my throat kind of opened up a little bit. I was like really weirded out. I walk back in, and my wife wakes up. She goes, "What is going on?" I said, "I don't know. I can't breathe. I feel better now." And all of a sudden, I had this horrible pain underneath my arms, like on the side of my chest. Like bad. I thought I'd been like ripped with a knife or something. It just was very intense. So I go into the bathroom, I flip on the light, and I have claw marks on both sides, and they're bleeding. And they're literally claw marks, 4 on either side. I put my fingers in them, don't fit my fingers, and I sleep on my side. So I show my wife, and she's like, "Oh my gosh." And then I have this like crazy intense desire to read the Bible. So I read the Bible and I pass out in like 2 minutes, and I wake up and the next morning I thought, man, did I have a wild dream? And then I see blood in my sheets, and I go in the bathroom and I have these bloody marks. And my wife goes, "I think you were attacked by some supernatural being." And I was like trying to be logical about it. And I was like, "Yeah, I definitely was." And then I called one of my producers who's like, "Oh yeah, well, that's pretty common." I was like, "What?"
So yeah, Tucker says he was attacked by demons. He's told this story multiple times now. Mm-hmm. And as somebody who knows more about Tucker Carlson than probably anything but besides his wife or himself, what do you make of this story?
I don't know if that's not true, but you might be right. He's gotten very religious in the past, 5 or 6 years, I think. He was like kind of a lapsed Episcopalian for a long time. And I think he has like a real disenchantment with the American church. He thinks it's become too liberal and too woke, and he's kind of gone in the other direction. I think this is a manifestation of that. I don't think this is a story that he's making up. I mean, I think he believes what he's saying there. And, there are a lot of people who believe in spiritual warfare and believe that demons are real and Satan is real. And I think he's one of them.
That gets to something that I wanted to ask you about, because Michelle Goldberg's column about your book, when she read your book, she really wanted to think about good faith versus bad faith. Tucker's career and his beliefs, his embracing this very right-wing, very charismatic Christianity is awfully convenient, isn't it? Like, that's what's really popular online right now. And she kind of wondered, is he arguing in bad faith? Is he just making this stuff up? Is it just like when he was on Crossfire with his little bow tie and he's playing a role? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's so hard to disentangle because I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's both, which I know is not like a satisfying answer. But look, he clearly is someone who pays attention to ratings, pays attention to what his audience wants from him. I mean, that is something that, I think a lot of media figures do. And I think it's something that maybe even happens more on the right than the left. I think conservative media people really live in mortal terror of being out of step with their audience. I mean, certainly that exists on the left as well. It's not just a right-wing thing, but I think Tucker certainly suffers from that. Putting all of that aside, like, people change their minds, and people's views change, their ideology changes. I think Tucker lived through significant events that caused him to rethink things. I think the Iraq War had a major impact on him and on his thinking, and I don't think that was cynical on his part. I think that was real, and honestly, I think like kind of admirable. You think about all the conservative pundits and liberal pundits as well. I mean, I worked at the New Republic at the time. You think about the cheerleading they did for the Iraq War and their support of it, and how few of them ever, one, acknowledged their mistake, or if they did acknowledge their mistake, really actually kind of wrestled with it and thought about why they made that mistake. I think Tucker's one who did. You could definitely argue that Tucker took the wrong lessons from that, but I think his change of heart was sincere in some ways.
Obviously, one of the most recent Tucker Carlson controversies is having Nick Fuentes on his show, which I'm sure happened all after you'd filed your book.
Yeah. I was able to add, like, I did an excerpt for the New Yorker, and all the new material was Nick Fuentes material.
In this interview with Megyn Kelly, he defended having Fuentes on his show and talked about, well, let me just play it for you.
I thought it would be controversial. I didn't think it would become what it's become. I'm not going to offer any defense other than, it's kind of interesting. I've interviewed I'm doing this for 34 years, so I've interviewed everybody, most of them bad people, to be honest.
Right.
I interviewed Liberian militia leaders during the Liberian Civil War, all cannibals, every single one of them had tasted human flesh.
As far as I know, Nick Fuentes hasn't eaten anyone. Jeffrey Dahmer ate people, and he was platformed by Diane Sawyer, and Nick Fuentes has said a long list of very vile things.
Big time, including attacking my dad, which was the most vile of all, in my opinion.
Yeah. I personally have watched videos of him questioning the Holocaust, likening it to baking cookies in the oven. So what do you say to those people who say, why didn't you raise any of that?
Do your own interview the way that you want to do it. You're not my editor. Buzz off. Why aren't you yelling at him? Okay, why? So I can show that I'm a good person?
Now, having done it, what do you think of him?
About Fuentes?
Yeah.
Well, he's just enormously gifted as a broadcaster. I mean, it's unbelievable. His talent is, he has not been canceled. He can't be canceled. So I kind of think of Fuentes in terms of like, what place does he occupy what does he say about our society? If this is the most popular person among young white men, then we need to start thinking about why that is, and we need to reflect on what we have collectively done to young men, which is destroy them, actually.
So we're both journalists. I watched maybe not all of the Nick Fuentes interview, but a huge chunks of it. And I would say that he did not approach that interview like you would a journalist would with such an odious character. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, he can say he interviewed Liberian cannibals, but like he wasn't sort of asking them, what their favorite part of the body was and sort of, ratifying their choice. No, it was a total softball interview with Fuentes, and he was engaged in a feud with Fuentes before that interview. He had criticized Fuentes. Fuentes had criticized him. They were fighting on their respective platforms, and Tucker was losing. You could sort of follow the course of the argument on social media, and Fuentes's fans, the Groypers, were sticking by Fuentes's side and attacking Tucker. And Tucker has, I think, made the calculus that to be successful in conservative media and conservative politics these days, you need to have the support of neo-Nazis, and he didn't want to lose them. And look, when he says, we do need to reflect, we should reflect on what's made Nick Fuentes popular. I think that's exactly right. I actually agree with that. I don't think that's what he did with his interview with Fuentes. I think he had Fuentes on, and he was nice to him, and he treated him with kid gloves, because he wanted Fuentes's audience to stick with him or to go to him. The debate about platforming and all, I think, is kind of a dumb debate. I think, look, Nick Fuentes is out there. Like, he's talking to a lot of people. You can't ignore him. And it wasn't wrong of Tucker to have him on the show. But the questions he asked him were they didn't sort of contribute to anyone's understanding of Nick Fuentes. It was just a peace offering as much as anything else.
So Tucker has gotten a lot of attention, I think, based on a lot of the race stuff over the past decade. Even when he was on Fox News, there were reports that neo-Nazis enjoyed his show, that they thought he was mainstreaming white supremacist talking points, and it's gotten worse since then. But we are also noticing that he has very odd views on gender. And so the last clip I want to show you is kind of just a taste of that. And I want to hear your thoughts on it.
Female leadership leads to violence.
Why is that? It's true.
I don't know, and I, as a great lover of women and the father of a number of women, and I'm not anti-women. I like. I like them more than men and anyone else.
I love women, but it's true. But I remember reading studies.
But female leadership leads to violence, and you see it. And it was Governor Wallace's wife who opened the windows to
smell the burning tires,
drink in the redolent odor of riot. The Bolsheviks' wives were more bloodthirsty than they were. I don't know exactly what that is. I think weak male leadership incites something in women that's really dark. That's not their fault. That's men's fault. Men's job is to lead. You can't shirk that duty because it's not created by man. It's pre-existent.
Well, they found in studies in Total War, women commit way more war crimes than men.
Lots to unpack there, as they would say.
I'm just going to say for the audience, I'm sure all of that is not true. We're just going to categorically assume that's all bullshit.
Yeah.
But
yeah, his gender views are interesting. It's funny, so I didn't, this is not a biography of Tucker, or at least I didn't set out to write that. And most of the book is about his professional career. I did write a little bit about his life and his childhood, and a formative moment for him was his parents got divorced when he was 6 years old, and then by the time he was 8, courts had awarded custody to his father, and his mother disappeared from his life, never to return. I don't think he ever saw her again after he was 8. I think he might have spoken to her a couple times. And years later, when she passed away, she left him and his little brother $1 in her will. And just talking to people in these kind of podcast interviews, some people really want to talk a lot about that and his mother, I can't. I'm not his shrink. I can't put him on the couch, but I do have to imagine that has something to do with his views of gender and his views on women. It's funny because as a boss, first of all, he's everybody who works for him over the years loves him, and fantastic boss, and including the women who worked for him, and stood up for them in ways that other male bosses didn't, and were sensitive to things that maybe other male bosses were not. That said, what he says about women publicly, especially their sort of roles in public life or in the workplace, it's really, pretty regressive. his own, his wife, who he has been with since high school. They were high school sweethearts. After college, when they were both working, when she was pregnant with their first child, she kind of decided she wanted to, not work and stay home and raise their kids. And they had 4 kids. He talks about that as like one of the most important moments in his life and her life, and he really seems to have an issue with and a critique of women who are professionals and who don't stay home to raise their children, and he thinks that they're unhappy, and he thinks they don't contribute to society, and I think you see some of that reflected in that clip with Alex Jones.
To get it away from the psychology, it says to me that he just knows that these views sell well to the audience that he's trying to reach. He literally said that he's trying to reach the Nick Fuentes, or he implied he's trying to reach the Nick Fuentes audience, and that's kind of what they want to hear too.
Yeah, no, I think there's something to that. I mean, he definitely has moved into this manosphere area. I don't think it was that big a leap for him to go into that area, and I think he has said things like that before the manosphere was a thing. But yeah, no, there's probably a little bit of posturing as well.
So thank you so much for joining me on Standing Room Only, Jason, and tell people how they can find your work, buy your book.
Yeah, buy the book. It's called Hated by All the Right People. It's published by Crooked Media. You can get it on, Bookshop, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, your independent bookstore. And I'm a writer at The New Yorker now, so you can follow my work there.
Awesome. Thank you again for joining us. And stick around, folks, for Encore. We have a really great song recommendation for you this week. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Hey folks, coming to you from Philadelphia. I'm at my house. I'm not at Latchkey. This week, Latchkey was closed for the no ice general strike, so I did not do that, so I'm coming to you from my house. And the song recommendation of the week is by a 70s band called James Chance and the Contortions, and the song is Flip Your Face, which I think is very appropriate for all the face flipping we've discussed in this episode. But what's very cool about this song is that it's part of the no wave movement of the late 70s in New York. And no wave was this avant-garde, very noisy. They were punk adjacent, but they were like more artistic. There were like a lot of classical musicians that got involved, people doing all sorts of strange stuff. Though one of the cool things about no wave was there was no expectation that you had musical training. A lot of people went in and just sort of did noise experiments and like taught themselves to play through that. Flip Your Face is a fun, kind of dancey, crazy, post-punk sounding song. And it is on the No New York compilation, which was put together by Brian Eno in the late 70s as a way to document this scene. Bands like Sonic Youth came out of it. But the bands on this are bands called James Chance and the Contortions, Teenage Jesus and the Jerks, DNA, and Mars. They're all very different sounding. Like Teenage Jesus and the Jerks is very like dirge-like, versus James Chance and the Contortions, which is like party music. It's loud, it's noisy, but it's definitely danceable. And it's also very cool to have this record because you can't find this album on streaming. This is not on Spotify. This is something that you have to have a physical copy of in most cases. And that's one of the beauties of record collecting. We live in an era where so many things you think you can just access infinitely because they're on streaming are suddenly yanked off of streaming services because of licensing or because of corporate nonsense. And so to actually own physical copies of your music is a way to make sure that it's never taken away from you. And that's one of the reasons I love record collecting. And I love James Chance and the Contortions. I got to DJ a punk night recently at Trestle Inn here in Philly, and I played the hell out of this band. So yeah, No New York compilation. All the bands on it are great. James Chance is probably the most accessible, and the song is called Flip Your Face. If you want more Standing Room Only episodes, please click the subscribe button below. Standing Room Only started as a newsletter, and it's free to read. Click the link to subscribe. I love tips. These political battles are playing out in your communities, your towns, your neighborhoods, your schools. If you have a story, please drop me a line or leave it in comments.